In continuation of my mental illness recovery through the application of mindfulness approach. In furtherance to one of the benefits of mindfulness, I began to view my mind as a mirror, which helped me to notice and reduce negative self-talk and inner criticism. This is how mindfulness enabled me confronted and softened my negative self-talk and inner critic. This is a pivotal because it shifted from external storms, panic, sleeplessness, to the internal dialogue that shapes my mental health. The mirror of the mind. I had always been my own harshest critic. If someone else forgot a detail in a report, I shrugged it off. But if I made the smallest mistake, my mind turned savage. You're so careless. Everyone's smarter than you. You'll never be enough. The voice came sharp, merciless, like a judge slamming its gavel. It didn't need an audience. It lived inside me, a shadow always whispering. Sometimes it was quiet, other times deafening, but it was always there. For years, I believed this voice was me, that the insults were truth, that the shame was proof of my flaws. But mindfulness was about to hand me a mirror. The first encounter. One morning, after finishing my daily breathing practice, I sat in silence a little longer. My apartment was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. I noticed a thought arise. You should have gotten up earlier. You're already behind. You're lazy. The old reflex would have been to agree, to tighten with guilt. But something in my practice nudged me to pause. Instead of reacting, I simply noticed. Thinking. Criticizing. The thought floated by like a line of text across the screen. I wasn't gone inside it, I was watching it. For the first time, I asked himself this question. Who's actually talking to me? That evening, as I opened my journal and wrote down every self-critical thought I noticed during the day. By bedtime, the page was filled with venom. You sounded stupid in that meeting. You're too quiet. No one respects you. You'll never catch up. Staring at the list, I felt a wave of shock. I would never speak this way to a friend or even a stranger. Yet my own mind hurled insults without mercy. Mindfulness had made the invisible visible. The mirror was showing me what I had never dared to see. The practice of noticing. In the days that followed, I decided to treat negative thoughts like clouds. Instead of fusing with them, I labeled them gently. A self-criticism. A worry. A fear. The act of naming created distance. I was no longer inside the thought. I was observing it. I realized that the voice in my head wasn't an ultimate truth. It was just a habit, a pattern, a story on repeat. And stories could be rewritten. The memory of childhood. One Saturday afternoon, during a longer mindfulness session, a memory surfaced. I was 10 years old, holding a math test with a big red 68 at the top. My father's disappointment was silent, but heavy. I remembered shrinking under the weight of it, hearing in my head, not good enough. The voice that haunted me all these years, it wasn't my own. It was inherited, absorbed, repeated until it sounded like me. Tears stung my eyes as I whispered aloud, it's not my voice. Mindfulness had uncovered something deeper. The critic had roots, but I did have to keep watering them. One evening, I tried something new. Instead of pushing the critic away, I placed a hand over my heart and breathed slowly. When the thought came, you're failing again, I whispered back. Thank you, but I don't need you right now. Then I added something even stranger, something the mindfulness teacher in a video had suggested to me. May I be kind to myself? At first, it felt awkward, almost laughable. But as I repeated it softly, my body relaxed. My chest loosened. My jaw unclenched. It was as if I had offered myself the kindness I'd been starving for. A week later, I made a small mistake at work, an email sent with a typographic error. Normally, this would have triggered a spiral of shame lasting hours. But this time, when the critic rose, I paused. I breathed. Noticed the thought. Named it. Self-criticism again. Then I asked myself, what if this mistake doesn't define me? What if it's just human? The wave of shame still came, but it was smaller, softer, passing more quickly. I fixed the typographic error and moved on. For once, the storm didn't consume me. the science behind the mirror. In my research, I discovered why this practice worked. Negative self-talk activated the brain's default mode network, the region linked to rumination and self-judgment. In overdrive, it fueled depression and anxiety. But mindfulness reduced activity in this network while increasing activation in regions linked to self-compassion and emotional regulation. In other words, mindfulness was literally rewiring my brain, not to erase the inner critic, but to quiet it and strengthen the voice of kindness. One afternoon, I sat in a cafe, sipping tea and watching strangers pass by. I noticed how gently I regarded them. The old man with trembling hands, the tired mother soothing her baby, the student frowning at textbooks. Compassion flowed easily toward them. And then it hit me, why not toward myself? I had spent years directing kindness outward, but never inward. Mindfulness was teaching me that self-compassion wasn't selfish, it was survival. That night, I journaled a new truth. The voice of criticism isn't who I am. Mindfulness shows me I can step back, see it, and choose a kinder voice. Healing isn't about silencing the storm. It's about remembering I am not the storm. A talk with Mrs. Charity. One evening, I shared my breakthrough with Mrs. Charity, my neighbor. I never realized how cruel I was to myself, I admitted. It's like I've been carrying an enemy in my own head. Charity nodded knowingly. Most of us are. But mindfulness is a mirror. It shows us the stories we tell ourselves. And once we see them, we can choose new ones. I sipped his tea, warmth spreading through me. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't broken, just learning to see differently. The gentle turning point. Weeks later, standing in front of my bathroom mirror, I looked at my reflection. The circles under my eyes were fading. My posture was straighter. But what struck me most was the quiet in my mind. The critic still appeared now and then. But instead of believing it, I saw it for what it was. A passing voice, not the truth. I placed a hand on the mirror, smiling faintly. "May I be kind to myself," I whispered. And for the first time in years, I believed it. I once lived at war with my own mind, beaten down by the voice of criticism. But mindfulness handed me a mirror, showing me that thoughts are not facts. By observing my inner critic, naming it, and responding with compassion, I began to break the cycle of shame. Because when we practice mindfulness, we learn the most radical truth of all. Healing begins not in silence, but in kindness toward ourselves. Mindfulness takes me deeper, beyond calming anxiety or silencing self-criticism, into healing old wounds that shaped my mental health in the first place. This approach of mindfulness practice can play a pivotal role that will help viewers to process their trauma without being consumed by it. The healing of wounds. I thought mindfulness was just about breathing, noticing thoughts, and finding calm. But one night, during a longer meditation, I discovered something unexpected. Mindfulness wasn't only about quieting the mind, it was also about facing the past. The flashback. It began with a sound. A neighbor slammed a door in the hallway, and the echo triggered a memory buried deep inside my chest. Suddenly, I was no longer sitting cross-legged in my apartment. I was 12 years old again, cowering in my bedroom while my parents argued downstairs. My stomach tightened, my breath shortened. The words from years ago replayed like a broken record, shouts, accusations, the sound of breaking glass. I opened my eyes, shaken. I hadn't thought about that night in years, but here it was, alive, raw. My first instinct was to run from it, to grab my phone, scroll mindlessly, drown it out. But mindfulness had taught me a different approach. To stay, breathe, witness. The body keeps the score. I remembered something Mrs. Charity had once said. The body remembers what the mind forgets. Mindfulness helps us listen. So instead of pushing the memory away, I placed my hand on my chest and focused on my breath. The fear in my stomach pulsed, sharp and heavy, but I didn't run. I whispered silently, "It's okay. I see you." And for the first time, I realized mindfulness wasn't just about observing thoughts. It was about holding pain gently, without judgment. The wounded child. Over the next few weeks, Similar memories resurfaced during meditation moments of loneliness at school, the sting of being mocked by classmates, the disappointment of a teacher telling me, "You're just not trying hard enough." Each memory carried its own flavor of shame, fear, or sadness. Instead of burying them again, I tried a practice I'd read about called inner child mindfulness. When an old wound appeared, I imagined sitting with the younger version of myself. I pictured that scared girl, hiding in her room, thinking she was good enough. And in my mind, I spoke softly. "You're not alone anymore. I'm here. You did your best. You're worthy of love." Tears streamed down my face as I repeated the words. I could change the past, but I could change the way I held it. The science of memory and mindfulness. Curious, I dove into research. I discovered that traumatic memories often remain unprocessed, stuck in the brain's fear center, the amygdala. Mindfulness, however, activated the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex regions that help regulate emotions and reframe experiences. In other words, by staying present with painful memories instead of avoiding them, the brain could literally refile the past into a safer, more integrated place. This wasn't about erasing wounds. It was about transforming the way they lived inside me. A night of release. One evening, I lit a single candle and sat quietly, ready to meet whatever arose. At first, only silence. Then, a rush of grief. I remembered the day my father left for good. I remembered pretending to be strong, telling my younger sister everything would be fine while secretly feeling broken. The grief hit me like a wave, and for a moment I thought I would drown. My chest shook with sobs, my breath ragged. But instead of pushing it away, I leaned in. I placed both hands over my heart, breathing deeply, whispering, "It's okay to feel this way. It's safe now. Let it move through." The sobbing lasted for some minutes, then softened into a quiet stillness. I felt lighter, as though I had released something I had been carrying for years. My conversation with Mrs. Charity. A few days later, I visited Mrs. Charity and shared what happened. "Does this mean I'm getting worse?" I asked nervously. "These old memories keep coming back." Mrs. Charity smiled gently.
"No, Julie.
"It means you're healing. Mindfulness doesn't erase wounds. It gives them a voice. What you're experiencing is your heart finally trusting you enough to open." She paused, then added, "Pain buried alive stays alive. Pain faced with compassion begins to transform." Her words settled deep in my bones. Mrs. Charity introduced me to forgiveness practice. She guided me, Mrs. Charity. I began a forgiveness meditation. I would close my eyes, bring to mind someone who had hurt me, sometimes a parent, sometimes a classmate, and silently repeated, "May you find peace. May you heal. I release what you did, so it no longer chains me." At first, the words felt impossible. Anger and resentment still bubbled. But Charity had told me earlier that forgiveness isn't condoning. It's freeing yourself from carrying the poison. Over time, the sharp edges of my resentment softened. Forgiveness wasn't instant, but it was unfolding. One night, I dreamt I was back in my childhood home. I saw my younger self sitting alone in the corner of my room. Instead of avoiding me, I knelt down, took the girl's hand, and whispered, "You survived. You're safe now." The girl looked up and smiled faintly before fading into light. I awoke with tears in my eyes, but also a sense of profound peace. It was as if my subconscious had joined the healing journey. The ripple in my daily life. The changes showed up subtly in daily life. A loud argument at work no longer sent me spiraling with panic. It reminded me of the past, but now I breathed through it. A moment of rejection from a friend still stung, but it didn't reopen old wounds as deeply. Instead, I could soothe myself with the compassion I had practiced. Mindfulness was teaching me not only to face the past, but to meet the present with resilience. Julie once thought mindfulness was only about calm breathing and easing stress. But as she practiced, the deeper truth emerged. Mindfulness is also about facing the wounds we carry. By staying present with painful memories, by holding her inner childhood with compassion, Julie also discovered that the past no longer had to define her future. If you're watching this and you've ever been into any kind of abused, rejection, abandoned, offended, and trauma, note that mindfulness approach is for you to recover and maintain your everyday mental health. It's also significant to know that mindfulness does not erase our scars. It teaches us to honor them, to integrate them, and to let them become part of our strength. Because healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means transforming the way we carry our story. Remember, your mental health affects everything about your day-to-day activities, such as your relationships, productivity, and healthy living.